Get that stinky country boy out of here, the bride screamed into the microphone, pointing a manicured finger directly at my face. The music died instantly. 500 heads turned to look at me, and a wave of cruel laughter rippled through the ballroom. I felt my throat tighten as security guards started moving toward me. I turned to leave to salvage the last shred of my dignity. But suddenly, a hand clamped onto my arm like a steel vice. It was my son, Justin. I thought he was stopping me to defend his father, but I was wrong. He leaned in close, his breath hot against my ear, and whispered 7 words that froze the blood in my veins. 7 words that changed me from a proud father into a cold hunter. Before I tell you what he said and how I made them all pay, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever been underestimated by your own family. My name is Clayton Forrester, and I am 69 years old. To the people in that room, I was just a dirt farmer, a stain on their perfect evening. They saw my faded work boots caked with the red clay of my farm, leaving faint prints on the pristine white marble of the Grand Hotel. They saw my suit, a charcoal gray wool number that I had bought 40 years ago for my wedding to my late wife Beatrice, now slightly tight across the shoulders and smelling faintly of mothballs and earth. They saw my calloused hands rough like tree bark hanging awkwardly by my sides. What they did not see was the truth. They did not see that I owned 40% of the hotel chain they were standing in. They did not see that the Forrester Land Trust, which I controlled, held the deed to the ground beneath their feet. They saw a peasant, but they were looking at a king in disguise. I had arrived at the engagement party 10 minutes late. My old pickup truck, a 1985 Chevy that I refused to trade in, had blown a tire on the highway. I had changed it myself on the side of the road, which explained the grease smudge on my cheek and the fresh mud on my boots. I had rushed inside, heart pounding with anticipation. My son Justin was getting engaged to a girl named Harper Kingsley. I had only met her once briefly, and she had seemed distant, but I chalked it up to nerves. Justin had told me this party was important. He told me it was my chance to show I supported him. I walked through the gilded double doors of the ballroom, my eyes scanning the crowd for my boy. The room was dripping with crystals and silk. Waiters in white jackets moved like ghosts with trays of champagne. The air smelled of expensive perfume and money. And there in the center of the dance floor stood Justin and Harper. He looked handsome in a tuxedo that probably cost more than my truck. She looked like a porcelain doll wrapped in white satin, her blonde hair piled high on her head. Then she saw me. The smile dropped from her face like a stone. She grabbed the microphone from the band leader. Her voice, shrill and piercing, cut through the chatter. "Oh my God!" she shrieked, her face twisting into a mask of pure disgust. "Who let the help in? No, wait! That is not the help. That is the stinky country boy." "Security, where is security? Get him out before he ruins the carpet." The silence that followed was absolute. It was a physical weight pressing down on my chest. Then came the laughter. It started as a titter from the bridesmaids, then spread to the groomsmen, and finally the entire room was shaking with mirth. They were laughing at me, my son's friends, my future in-laws. I stood there frozen. I looked at the table near the front, where Richard and Victoria Kingsley Harper's parents were sitting. Richard, a man who claimed to be a real estate tycoon, but whose eyes darted around like a cornered rat, looked at me with open contempt. Victoria covered her nose with a silk handkerchief, as if I were a pile of manure. "Justin, we should call the kennel," Victoria said, loud enough for half the room to hear. "Maybe they have a cage big enough for him." I looked at Justin. My boy. The boy I had taught to fish in the creek behind our house. The boy I had carried on my shoulders when he broke his leg in the 4th grade. The boy I had put through business school by selling off parcels of timber when times were tight. I waited for him to step forward. I waited for him to take the microphone and tell them that this man was his father, and he demanded respect. But Justin did nothing. He stood there, his face flushed not with anger at them, but with shame at me. He looked at his shiny Italian shoes, unable to meet my gaze. Harper was on a roll now, feeding off the crowd's energy. "Seriously, look at him," she laughed, pointing a finger that boasted a diamond ring I knew Justin could not afford. "He smells like he just rolled around with the pigs." Somebody open a window. A large security guard with a headset moved into my peripheral vision. He put a hand on my shoulder. "Sir, you need to leave," he said, his voice low and threatening. "This is a private event." I brushed his hand off. I did not need to be dragged out. I had my pride. I looked at Justin one last time, hoping for a sign, a glance, anything. He remained silent, his posture slumped, a coward in a three-piece suit. Fine, I thought. If I am not wanted, I will go. I turned around, the rubber soles of my boots squeaking on the polished floor. The laughter followed me, a chorus of hyenas. I focused on the exit doors, my heart hammering a rhythm of pain and betrayal. I would go back to the farm. I would sit on the porch with a glass of whiskey, and I would accept that I had lost my son to these vultures. I was 3 steps away from the door when it happened. Wait, it was Justin. I stopped, but I did not turn around. I heard his footsteps, hurried and heavy, coming toward me. For a fleeting second, a spark of hope ignited in my chest. Maybe he had found his spine. Maybe he was coming to apologize, to walk out with me, to leave this nest of vipers. He grabbed my arm just above the elbow. His grip was hard, painful. He spun me around, but not to hug me. He pulled me close, his face inches from mine. His eyes were wide and frantic, but there was no love in them, only panic and a cold, hard greed. "Where do you think you are going?" he hissed through clenched teeth. "I am leaving Justin," I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. "I am clearly not welcome here." He squeezed my arm harder, digging his fingers into my muscle. "You are not going anywhere, old man. You are going to turn around. You are going to walk back to that table, and you are going to sit there and smile." Why, I asked, confused by his aggression. "Why would you want me here when you let them treat me like a dog?" He leaned in closer, his lips brushing my ear. The smell of expensive scotch on his breath made me nauseous. "Because Harper is pregnant," he whispered. I froze. The world seemed to stop spinning. Pregnant. A grandchild. The anger in my chest wavered, replaced by a sudden surge of emotion. Beatrice, my late wife, had always wanted grandchildren. We had talked about it for years, sitting by the fire, imagining little feet running across the floorboards of the farmhouse. A baby. I stammered, my voice softening. "Yes, a baby," Justin hissed. "But listen to me closely, Dad. If you walk out that door right now, if you embarrass me or Harper by making a scene, I swear to you on Mom's grave, you will never see that child. You will never know its name. You will never hold it. You will die alone in that rotbox farmhouse without ever meeting your own blood." The words hit me like physical blows. He was using his unborn child, my grandchild, as a weapon. He was blackmailing me with the only thing he knew I cared about more than my dignity. I looked into his eyes, searching for the boy I once knew. I saw nothing. I saw a stranger. A weak, desperate man who would sell his own father for a seat at the cool kids' table. "Don't test me, Dad." Justin continued, his voice dropping an octave. "We need you here. We need you to look like the pathetic country bumpkin they think you are. Harper's parents need to feel superior. It makes them generous. And I need them to be generous. So you are going to go back there. You are going to eat your dinner, and you are going to sign the wedding gift papers when we put them in front of you. Do you understand? Wedding gift papers? What papers don't play dumb?" Justin snapped. "The transfer, the deed to the farm. We are selling it to buy a penthouse in the city. Harper doesn't want a baby growing up visiting a dirt farm. My farm. The forester land that had been in my family for 3 generations. The land where Beatrice was buried under the great oak tree on the hill. He wanted me to sign it over so he could sell it and buy a condo for this woman who had just called me stinky trash. The rage returned, but this time it was different. It was not hot and explosive. It was cold. It was ice. It was the kind of calm a soldier feels before he pulls the trigger. I looked at Harper still standing on the stage, smirking at her friends. I looked at the Kingsleys checking their watches. I looked at the security guard waiting to throw me out. And then I looked at Justin. He thought he had me. He thought I was a weak, lonely old man who would do anything for a crumb of family connection. He thought the farm was just a pile of dirt worth a few $100,000. He didn't know about the mineral rights contract I had signed last week. He didn't know about the $15 million sitting in the trust account waiting to be allocated. He didn't know that the bank he owed money to was a subsidiary of a holding company I owned. He wanted a country bumpkin fine. I would give him the performance of a lifetime. I let my shoulders slump. I let my face crumble into a mask of defeat and submission. I forced my eyes to look watery and scared. "Okay, son," I whispered, letting my voice crack. "Okay. Please don't keep the baby from me. I will do whatever you say. Just let me see my grandchild." Justin relaxed his grip. A smug, triumphant smile spread across his face. He patted my cheek, a gesture so condescending it took every ounce of my willpower not to break his hand. "Good boy, Dad. Now wipe that mud off your face and try not to embarrass me any more than you already have." He turned and walked back toward the dance floor, raising his arms to the crowd. "It is okay, everyone," he shouted, laughing. "The old man is just confused. He forgot his medication. We are letting him stay because we are charitable people, right?" The crowd laughed again. Harper clapped her hands delightedly. "Oh, you are such a saint, Justin," she cooed into the microphone. "Let him sit in the back corner. And somebody bring some air freshener." I stood there for a moment, smoothing my old jacket. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of their expensive perfumes, which now smelled to me like rotting meat. I walked slowly toward the table in the back, the one furthest from the stage near the kitchen doors. As I walked past the Kingsley family, Richard Kingsley sneered at me. "Try not to use the tablecloth as a napkin, Elmer Fudd," he said as his wife giggled. I lowered my head, playing the part. "Yes, sir. Sorry, sir," I mumbled. I sat down in the wobbly chair at the empty table. A waiter passed by, and I asked for a glass of water. He ignored me. I sat alone watching my son kiss the woman who despised me. I watched them toast to their future, a future built on my land, my money, and my grave. They thought they had won. They thought they had trapped the old wolf, but they didn't realize they had just locked themselves in the cage with him. I reached into the inner pocket of my jacket and pulled out my old flip phone. It looked ancient, a piece of junk to match my outfit, but it was encrypted, connected directly to my attorney, Lawrence. I opened a text message draft. "It is time, Lawrence." I typed my thumb, moving quickly over the keypad. "Run a full financial background check on the Kingsleys. Check Justin's debts. And get me the medical records for Harper. I want to know exactly how far along this pregnancy is." I hit send and snapped the phone shut. I looked up at the head table where Justin was laughing, drinking champagne that I had essentially paid for. "Enjoy the party, son," I thought, because the hangover is going to be brutal. The waiter finally dropped a plate of cold chicken in front of me without stopping. I picked up my fork. My hand was steady. The game had begun, and Clayton Forrester never loses on his home turf. As I ate the dry chicken, I tuned my hearing to the table next to me. It was the Kingsley table. They were loud drunk on their own arrogance, assuming the old man in the corner was deaf or too stupid to understand them. Victoria was leaning in close to Justin. "So when do we get the papers signed?" she asked. "We need that deposit for the penthouse by Monday, or we lose the listing." Justin swallowed a large gulp of wine. "Tonight," he said. "I have the notary coming in an hour. We will get him to sign it during the gift opening." He will do it. I put the fear of God in him. And the nursing home, Richard asked, cutting a piece of steak. Found a cheap one off the highway, Justin replied. State-funded. It smells like bleach and cabbage, but it is affordable. Once the farm is sold, we deposit him there. Tell him it is a resort. He is so desperate he will believe anything. I chewed my food slowly. State-funded. Bleach and cabbage. So that was the retirement plan my son had for me. After I had paid for his private school. After I had bought him his first car. After I had nursed him through his divorce 3 years ago. He wasn't just greedy. He was cruel. Harper joined the conversation, her hand resting on her stomach. I just hope he doesn't try to touch me, she said, wrinkling her nose. I don't want his grime on my dress. And Justin, are you sure the farm is worth enough? The penthouse is $3 million. It is prime agricultural land, babe, Justin assured her. Developers are dying for it. We will get $3 million easy, maybe more if we sell the timber rights separately. I almost laughed out loud. $3 million. They were underselling it by $12 million. They were so lazy they hadn't even done a proper appraisal. They just saw dollar signs and grabbed. But something else caught my ear. Harper turned to her mother and whispered much lower. Do you think Justin suspects what? Victoria hissed back, looking around nervously. About the dates, Harper whispered. I am showing early mom. If he does the math. He won't do the math, Victoria snapped. He is an idiot, Harper. He is so happy to be marrying into the Kingsley name he wouldn't care if the baby came out green. Just keep your mouth shut. Once we have the money from the farm, it won't matter. You can divorce him in a year and take half. I stopped chewing. So that was it. The baby. The timeline didn't match. Justin and Harper had been dating for 2 months. If she was showing early, that meant she was at least 3 or 4 months pregnant. The baby wasn't his. My son was being played. He was the patsy, the fool they needed to fund their lifestyle and give a name to another man's child. And he was too blinded by his own ambition to see it. For a split second, I felt a pang of pity for him. He was a shark trying to swim with orcas, and he was about to get eaten. But then I remembered his hand on my arm. I remembered his whisper. If you leave, you will never see the child. He was willing to destroy me for them. He was willing to throw me into a state-run nursing home to please these people who were laughing at him behind his back. The pity evaporated. It was replaced by a cold, hard resolve. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I checked it under the table. It was Lawrence. I have the preliminary report, Clayton. It is interesting. Very interesting. You need to see this. Send it. I text back. A minute later, an image loaded on my small screen. It was a screenshot of a foreclosure notice. The Kingsley family estate. 3 months in arrears. Notice of auction set for next week. They were broke. The rich, sophisticated Kingsleys who looked at me like dirt were drowning in debt. They didn't have a dime. This wedding wasn't a celebration of love. It was a hostile takeover. They were using my son to get to my farm to save themselves from bankruptcy. And Justin. Why was he so desperate? I texted Lawrence again. Check Justin's accounts. The reply came fast. Gambling debts, Clayton. 200,000. And there is a warrant pending for embezzlement from his last company. He needs the cash to pay it back before they press charges. The puzzle pieces clicked into place. A broke family looking for a bailout. A son in debt looking for a payday. A pregnant woman looking for a cover. And in the middle of it all, the stinky country boy they thought was an easy mark. I looked at the stage where the cake was being wheeled out. A massive 5-tier monstrosity. Justin tapped the microphone. Attention. Everyone, before we cut the cake, we have a very special moment. My father, He pointed at me and the spotlight swung to my table, blinding me. My father has a gift he wants to present to us, a token of his appreciation. He beckoned me to come up. "Come on up, Dad. Don't be shy." The crowd applauded politely, but I could see the smirks. I stood up. I buttoned my old jacket. I wiped my mouth with the paper napkin. I walked toward the stage. The walk was long. Every step echoed on the marble. I saw the notary waiting at the side of the stage holding a thick folder, the deed to the farm. I saw Harper smiling that predatory smile. I saw the Kingsleys leaning forward, hungry for the kill. I stepped onto the stage. The lights were hot. Justin put an arm around my shoulder. He squeezed tight, a reminder of his threat. "Here he is, folks, the man of the hour." He handed me a pen. It was a Mont Blanc, heavy and expensive. "Just sign right here, Dad," he whispered, pointing to the line. "And then you can go." I took the pen. I looked at the paper. Transfer of deed, Forester Farm, $1 consideration. I looked at the crowd. 500 faces waiting to see the old fool should give away his life's work. I looked at Justin. "Are you sure about this, son?" I asked, my voice amplified by the microphone. "Are you sure this is what you want?" "Just sign it, you old bat," he hissed, his smile never wavering. I looked at Harper. "And you, my dear, you want this farm?" "I want what is best for the family," Harper said sweetly. "Family," I repeated. I lowered the pen to the paper. The room went silent. Then I stopped. I looked up. I looked directly into the camera lens of the videographer. "Actually," I said, my voice booming, "I think I forgot my reading glasses. My eyes aren't what they used to be." Justin stiffened. "Just sign it, Dad. You don't need to read it." "Oh, but I do," I said. "I always read before I sign. That is how I kept the farm for 40 years. I patted my pockets theatrically. "Nope, no glasses. I guess I will have to run out to the truck and get them." Harper's eyes narrowed. "You are ruining the schedule," she snapped, forgetting the microphone was on. "It will only take a minute," I said, turning to leave the stage. Justin grabbed my arm again. "Dad, do not walk away," he whispered violently. I pulled my arm free. It was easy. I had baled hay for 50 years. He had pushed pencils. He was weak. "I will be right back, son," I said loud and clear. "Just hold that thought, and hold that pen." I walked off the stage. The murmur of the crowd rose again. I walked past the Kingsleys, who were looking at Justin with fury. "Fix this," Victoria mouthed to him. I walked out the double doors. I walked past the security guard who looked confused. I walked out into the cool night air. I did not go to my truck. I went to the service entrance around the back where a black town car was waiting. The window rolled down. Lawrence sat there holding a thick file. "Did you get it?" I asked. Everything, Lawrence said, handing me the folder. The medical records, the bankruptcy filings, the embezzlement evidence, and the DNA test results from Harper's ex-boyfriend. "It is all here, Clayton. It is a nuclear bomb." I took the folder. It felt heavy in my hands. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Clayton Lawrence asked. "He is your son." I looked back at the hotel. I saw the lights. I heard the music. "My son died a long time ago, Lawrence," I said. "That man in there. That is just a thief wearing his face." I opened the car door. "Come on, Lawrence," I said. "I need my lawyer. We have a wedding to crash." I adjusted my tie. I smoothed my hair. The stinky country boy was gone. The landlord was about to enter the building, and eviction time was starting now. I let Justin guide me to the main table, his grip on my elbow tight enough to bruise. He pushed me into a chair next to his future mother-in-law, Victoria Kingsley. She recoiled as if I were a carrier of the plague, pressing her silk napkin to her nose. I sat hunched over, making myself look smaller, older, and more defeated than I had ever been in my life. This was the performance they wanted, and I was going to give it to them until they choked on it. The waiter placed a bowl of lobster bisque in front of me. The steam rose, carrying the scent of sherry and cream, a smell that usually made my stomach grow, but tonight it turned inside out. I looked around the table. Richard Kingsley was busy pouring more wine, his face flushed with the kind of confidence that only comes from ignorance. Harper was whispering to Justin, pointing at a brochure for a luxury penthouse, on her phone, her acrylic nails tapping aggressively on the screen. They were ignoring me completely, treating me like a piece of furniture that had been placed in the wrong room. I decided it was time to test their patience. I reached for my spoon, letting my hand tremble violently. I mimicked the tremors I had seen in old men who had truly lost their strength, men whose hands betrayed them after decades of hard labor. My spoon clattered against the fine china, a sharp ringing sound that cut through their conversation. "Oops," I mumbled, slurring my words slightly. "Hands aren't what they used to be." I dipped the spoon into the soup, and as I lifted it, I jerked my wrist. The thick orange liquid splashed onto the pristine white tablecloth, spreading like a gruesome wound. A few drops landed on Victoria's expensive dress. She shrieked, jumping up from her chair as if she had been burned by acid. "You clumsy idiot," she yelled, swiping at the stain. "Look what you did. This is Italian silk." Justin grabbed my wrist, his eyes bulging with suppressed rage. "Dad, watch what you are doing," he hissed under his breath. "You are embarrassing me." I looked at him with wide, watery eyes, playing the part of the confused geriatric perfectly. "Sorry, son," I stammered. "Just a little slip. Must be the nerves. Or maybe I am just hungry. Haven't eaten since breakfast." Harper rolled her eyes, a look of pure venom on her face. "God. Justin, can't we just put him in the corner? He is going to ruin the photos if he keeps spilling food on himself like a toddler." "Not yet," Justin whispered back, his voice tight. "We need him at the table for the toast. Just ignore him." They went back to their conversation, assuming that my hearing was as gone as my dexterity. They spoke over my head, around me, through me. It was a fascinating and horrifying display of inhumanity. They were dissecting my life and my future, while I sat right there, carving up my existence as if I were already a corpse. "So, about the living arrangements," Victoria said, taking a large gulp of wine. "We can't have him staying at the penthouse, obviously. There isn't room, and quite frankly, he doesn't fit the aesthetic." Justin nodded, taking a piece of bread. "I know. I found a place off the interstate. Shady Pines or something like that. It is state-funded, so it won't eat into the profits from the farm sale." I kept my head down, stirring my soup, pretending to focus on chasing a piece of lobster. Shady Pines. I knew the place. It was a warehouse for the forgotten. A place where the air smelled of urine and despair. That was where my son, the boy I had raised with every ounce of love I possessed, intended to dump me. "Is it secure?" Harper asked, not looking up from her phone. "I don't want him wandering off and showing up at our door asking for money or embarrassing us in front of the neighbors." "It has a lockdown unit," Justin assured her. "We can tell the doctors he wanders. Get him put in the memory care wing. They keep the doors locked tight. Once he is in, he stays in." My heart hammered against my ribs, a slow, heavy drumbeat of fury. They weren't just planning to abandon me. They were planning to imprison me. They were going to lie to doctors, claim I was demented, and lock me away so they could enjoy my money without guilt. It was monstrous. It was evil. And it was being planned by my own flesh and blood between bites of lobster. "And the farm sale?" Richard Kingsley asked, leaning forward greedily. "Is that a done deal? I have creditors breathing down my neck, Justin. We need that cash infusion by Friday." Justin smiled, that slick salesman smile that I used to think was charming, but now looked like the grin of a shark. "It is in the bag. The old man will sign whatever I put in front of him. He thinks it is just a formality to put the land in a trust for the baby. He doesn't know the transfer deed gives me full power of attorney to liquidate. I almost dropped my spoon again, but this time I held it steady. So that was the mechanism. A fraudulent transfer disguised as a gift for a grandchild. He was going to trick me into signing away my rights under the guise of protecting his unborn child. It was clever. It was ruthless. And it was entirely based on the assumption that I was a senile old fool who didn't read fine print. But I read everything. I read the market reports every morning. I read the soil analysis data. And I read the financial statements of the Forester Land Trust. They were talking about $3 million as if it were the GDP of a small country. They were salivating over it, desperate for it. They had no idea. I took a sip of water to hide the smirk threatening to break through my facade. $3 million. That was pocket change. Last month I had quietly finalized a deal with a renewable energy consortium. They had leased the wind rights on the northern ridge of my property. The signing bonus alone was $5 million. And 2 weeks before that, I had sold the mineral rights to a mining company for a cool $15 million. That money was sitting in a diversified portfolio safely tucked away in accounts that Justin didn't even know existed. My net worth wasn't $3 million. It was closer to $40 million. I owned the bank that held the mortgage on the Kingsley's crumbling estate. I was the silent majority shareholder in the construction firm that Justin had been fired from for embezzlement. I was the stinky country boy who could buy and sell everyone at this table 10 times over without breaking a sweat. But they didn't see the tycoon. They saw the mud on my boots. They saw the fraying collar of my shirt. They saw what they wanted to see. A victim. I need that penthouse, Justin Harper whined, putting her phone down. The one with the terrace. It is perfect for entertaining. And I need a new car. The Mercedes is 2 years old. It is embarrassing. You will get it, babe, Justin promised, kissing her hand. Once the papers are signed tonight, we are golden. We will list the farm tomorrow morning. I already have a developer interested. He wants to bulldoze the farmhouse and put up condos. Bulldoze the farmhouse. The house my grandfather built with his own hands. The house where I proposed to Beatrice. The house where Justin took his first steps. He was going to flatten it to build cheap condos for strangers. The pain of that realization was sharper than any physical blow. It wasn't just greed. It was a complete erasure of our history. He wanted to wipe away every trace of where he came from, every trace of me. I looked at him. Really looked at him. I saw the sweat beading on his forehead despite the air conditioning. I saw the way his hand shook slightly as he reached for his wine. He was terrified. He was drowning in debt, running from the law, and he thought throwing me to the wolves was his only life raft. He wasn't a man. He was a parasite. "Excuse me," I said loudly, interrupting their planning session. My voice was raspy, and I let my head loll to the side a bit. They all stopped and looked at me with annoyance. "What is it, Dad?" Justin snapped. "I need to use the little boy's room," I said, craning my neck. "Which way is the outhouse?" Harper gagged audibly. "Oh my God, he is disgusting. Justin, take him away before I throw up." Justin stood up, roughly grabbing my chair and pulling it back. "Come on, Dad. It is a restroom, not an outhouse. Try to remember that." He marched me toward the doors, his grip bruising my arm again. "Don't talk to anyone," he whispered as we walked. "Don't look at anyone. Just do your business and come right back. And wash your hands, for God's sake." I nodded mutely, shuffling my feet. He shoved me through the restroom door and waited outside like a prison guard. I walked into the bathroom. It was empty. I moved to the sinks and turned on the tap, letting the water run loud. I stared at myself in the mirror. The face looking back was lined and weathered. The eyes were tired. But behind the tiredness there was a fire burning, a cold blue flame of retribution. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the encrypted phone again. I dialed Lawrence. He answered on the first ring. "I am in the bathroom," I whispered, my eyes fixed on the door. "Are you in position? I am in the service corridor." Lawrence replied, his voice crisp and professional. "I have the files, the bankruptcy filings for the Kingsleys, the embezzlement warrant for Justin, the medical records confirming the pregnancy dates. And Clayton, I found something else. What I asked, bracing myself. The trust documents Justin drew up. I hacked into his lawyer's server. It is worse than we thought. The transfer isn't just for the farm. It includes a power of attorney clause that activates immediately upon signing. It gives him control over your medical decisions too. He has already pre-authorized a do not resuscitate order in your name." I gripped the edge of the sink, my knuckles turning white. He wasn't just going to lock me away. He was going to let me die if I so much as coughed wrong. He had signed my death warrant before I was even sick. "That settles it," I said, my voice dropping to a growl. "No mercy, Lawrence. None." "Understood. I will be ready when you give the signal." I hung up and splashed cold water on my face. I washed the grease off my cheek. I straightened my tie. I wasn't going back out there to be the victim. I was going back out there to be the executioner. I walked out of the bathroom. Justin was leaning against the wall, scrolling through his phone. He looked up and scowled. "Took you long enough. Let's go. It is time for the speeches." He grabbed my arm again, but this time I didn't flinch. I let him lead me back to the slaughterhouse. We walked back to the table. The mood had shifted. The lights were dimmed and a spotlight was searching the room. "It is time for the father of the groom to say a few words," the DJ announced, his voice booming over the speakers. Justin froze. He hadn't planned for this. He wanted me silent, invisible. "Dad, no," he whispered frantically. "You are not speaking. I will tell them you are not feeling well." But the spotlight found us. It blinded me for a second, a circle of white light in the darkness. The crowd applauded politely, waiting for the country bumpkin to stammer through a speech. Harper looked horrified. She was shaking her head at the DJ, making a cutting motion across her throat. But it was too late. A waiter thrust a microphone into my hand. I held it. It felt heavy, cold. Justin dug his nails into my shoulder. "Don't you dare," he hissed. "Sit down. Now." I looked at him. I smiled. It wasn't the confused smile of an old man. It was the smile of the wolf who had just found the open gate to the sheep pen. "I am fine, son," I said. My voice amplified loud and clear over the speakers. "I think I have a few things to say." I shook off his hand and stepped away from the table. I walked toward the center of the room into the pool of light. The silence was heavy, thick with tension. They were waiting for me to fail, to slur my words, to say something stupid. I looked at the Kingsleys, their faces pale with anger. I looked at Harper, her eyes narrowing with hate. I looked at Justin, who looked like he was about to vomit. I cleared my throat. "Good evening, everyone," I said. My voice was steady, deep, commanding. The waver was gone. The slur was gone. This was the voice that had negotiated million-dollar contracts. This was the voice of Clayton Forrester. "I know I don't look like much to you folks. Just a stinky country boy, right?" A few nervous chuckles rippled through the room. I stood tall, my shoulders squaring. But you know what they say about books and covers. Sometimes the dust jacket is dirty, but the story inside, well, the story inside is worth a fortune. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It wasn't a speech. It was the printout of the text message Lawrence had sent me earlier. The foreclosure notice. "My son Justin here wants to sell my farm." I continued walking slowly toward the head table. "He says he needs to buy a penthouse. He says he wants the best for his new bride and their unexpected miracle. I paused, letting the word miracle hang in the air. I saw Harper flinch. But you see, there is a funny thing about that farm. It isn't just dirt. It is legacy. And legacy is something you don't sell. You protect it. You protect it from drought. You protect it from pests. I stopped right in front of Justin. And sometimes you have to protect it from rats. Justin's face went gray. He knew. In that moment, he looked into my eyes, and he saw the mask fall away. He saw the father he had underestimated, and he knew he was done. I turned back to the crowd. I have a wedding gift too, I said, raising the paper. But I don't think I will be signing any deeds tonight. Instead, I think I will be making a donation. I ripped the paper in half, the sound echoing in the silent room. To the Legal Defense Fund for Victims of Elder Abuse, I roared, my voice thundering. Because trust me, folks, you are going to need it. And then I pointed to the back doors. Lawrence now. The double doors burst open. Lawrence marched in, flanked by 4 uniformed police officers and a man in a cheap suit who looked very out of place. The man in the cheap suit was the process server, and the police officers. They weren't there for the cake. The trap had sprung, and the rats had nowhere to run. I pushed through the heavy oak doors of the restroom, and the wall of noise from the ballroom instantly vanished, replaced by the hum of expensive ventilation and the soft drip of a gold faucet. The bathroom was a palace of marble and brass, fit for the kings these people pretended to be. I checked the stalls. Empty. I was alone. Finally, I could drop the act. The confused hunch in my shoulders evaporated. I stood up to my full height of 6'2", my spine cracking as I straightened. I walked to the row of sinks and gripped the cold porcelain, staring at my reflection in the gilded mirror. The man looking back at me was a masterpiece of deception. Mud smeared on the cheek, gray hair tousled like a bird nest, a suit that looked like it had been pulled from a dumpster. I looked every inch the senile dirt farmer my son claimed I was. But the eyes were different. The eyes were sharp, clear, and burning with a cold blue fire that had terrified boardroom executives for 40 years. I reached into the inside pocket of my frayed jacket. My fingers brushed past the cheap plastic comb I carried as a prop and found the cold, smooth metal of my satellite phone. It was a military-grade device, encrypted and untraceable, the kind of technology used by men who owned islands, not farms. I flipped it open and dialed a single number. It rang once. "I am listening," a voice answered instantly. It was Lawrence, my chief legal counsel, and the only man on earth who knew exactly how much the Forrester empire was worth. He did not say hello. He did not ask how the party was. He knew that if I was calling on the red line, the situation had gone critical. "Lawrence," I said, my voice low and steady, echoing slightly off the marble tiles. "I need you to execute a full, deep-dive forensic audit. Right now. I want to know everything about the Kingsley family. Richard, Victoria, and the daughter Harper. I want bank statements, credit scores, mortgage statuses, and any pending litigation." "Consider it done," Lawrence replied, the sound of keyboard keys clacking furiously in the background, already audible. "Is there a problem, Clayton?" "A problem." I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "You could say that. They are trying to force me to sign over the deed to the farm tonight. They are threatening to put me in a state-run nursing home, Lawrence. The one on Highway 9. The typing stopped abruptly. The silence on the line was heavy. "Highway 9, Lawrence repeated, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "That place has been cited for human rights violations, Clayton. People go in there and they do not come out." "I know," I said, looking at my own eyes in the mirror. "That is the plan. But that is not all. I need you to look into Justin, too." "Your son," Lawrence asked. "My son," I confirmed, feeling a fresh wave of pain wash over me. He is the one orchestrating it. He is desperate, Lawrence. He is sweating like a pig on a spit out there. He is terrified of something, and I need to know what it is. Check his employment records, his gambling debts, and cross-reference his name with any active police warrants in the tri-state area. Understood, Lawrence said. And Lawrence, I added, my hand tightening on the phone. Harper, the bride. She is pregnant. Or at least she claims to be. Get into her medical records. I don't care what laws you have to bend. I want to know conception dates. I want to know if there is a paternity test. I want to know if that child is actually my blood or just another pawn in their game. I will have a preliminary report in 5 minutes, Lawrence promised. Stay on the line. I put the phone on speaker and set it on the marble counter. I turned on the tap and splashed freezing cold water on my face, washing away the grease smudge I had carefully applied earlier. As I dried my face with a thick cloth towel, I let the anger simmer down into a cold, hard knot in my stomach. I thought about the mineral rights deal I had closed last week. $15 million in liquid cash sitting in an offshore account, ready to be reinvested. I had planned to surprise Justin with a portion of it for his wedding. I had planned to set up a trust fund for this baby. I had planned to reveal that the stinky country boy was actually the silent owner of the bank that held his mortgage. I wanted to see the look of relief on his face. I wanted to be his hero one last time. But heroes don't get sent to nursing homes. Victims do. I paced the length of the bathroom, my heavy boots thudding rhythmically. I thought about the farm. My father had plowed that earth with mules. I had modernized it, expanded it, and discovered the lithium deposits beneath the soil that made it worth more than this entire hotel. Justin saw only dirt. He saw only a quick cash grab to buy a penthouse he didn't need to impress people who didn't care about him. The phone beeped. A file transfer notification lit up the small screen. I have it. Lawrence's voice came through tinny but clear. Clayton, you are going to want to sit down for this. I am standing, I said, bracing myself against the sink. Give it to me. Let's start with the Kingsleys. Lawrence began, his voice devoid of emotion, reading facts that were about to destroy lives. They are frauds, Clayton. Complete and total frauds. Richard Kingsley has not closed a real estate deal in 18 months. Their estate in the Hamptons is in active foreclosure. The auction is scheduled for next Tuesday. They have maxed out 16 credit cards and have a lien against their primary residence for unpaid taxes amounting to $400,000. I closed my eyes. So that was it. They weren't looking down on me because they were rich. They were looking down on me because they needed me to be weak. They were drowning sharks looking for a seal. They are destitute, Lawrence continued. They are currently surviving on payday loans and appearances. This wedding, it is a Hail Mary pass. They are banking entirely on your son's perceived inheritance to bail them out. They think selling your farm will clear their tax debt and save their house. They are betting on a horse that doesn't even know it is in the race, I muttered. And Justin. That is worse, Lawrence said, and I could hear the hesitation in his voice. Much worse. Justin was fired from his position as sales director 3 months ago, Leighton. For cause. For cause, I asked. Embezzlement. Lawrence said the word landing like a hammer blow. He diverted $200,000 of company funds into a private account. The company hasn't pressed charges yet because he promised restitution by the end of the month. That is why he needs the farm sale immediately. If he doesn't pay them back by the first of the month, they are going to the district attorney. He is looking at 5 to 10 years in federal prison. My knees felt weak. My son was a thief. He wasn't just bad with money, he was a criminal. He had looked me in the eye, smiled, and tried to steal my home to cover up his own crimes. He was willing to lock his father away in a hellhole to save his own skin. But wait, there is more, Lawrence said. The $200,000. He didn't spend it on cars or clothes. He lost it. Online gambling. He owes another $50,000 to a loan shark operating out of Jersey. These people don't file lawsuits, Clayton. They break kneecaps. Your son is walking dead. I stared at my reflection. The face in the mirror looked older suddenly, every line etched deeper by the weight of my son's betrayal. He was cornered. That explained the sweat, the panic, the aggression. He wasn't just greedy. He was terrified. He was a rat in a trap chewing off his own father's leg to escape. And the baby, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Please tell me the baby is real, Lawrence. Please tell me there is one innocent thing in this mess. There is a baby, Lawrence confirmed. Harper is definitely pregnant. 4 months along. 4 months, I did the mental math. Justin met her 2 months ago. Exactly, Lawrence said. I pulled her records. She was seeing a personal trainer up until 3 months ago. A guy named Muscular Mike on social media. He posted a breakup rant about her leaving him for a rich guy to support the kid. Justin is the Mark Clayton. He is the retirement plan for the parents and the safety net for the girl. I felt a laugh bubble up in my throat, a dark, bitter sound. It was perfect. It was a perfect storm of lies. The Kingsleys were broke and using Justin. Justin was broke and using me. Harper was pregnant by another man and using Justin. And everyone thought I was the fool. They are all drowning and trying to climb on top of each other to breathe, I said. Essentially, yes, Lawrence agreed. And you are the only island in the ocean. If you sign that deed, they survive. If you don't, they all sink. I looked at the phone. I looked at the mud on my hands. I thought about Beatrice. I thought about how she used to make Justin do his homework at the kitchen table, how she used to tell him that honesty was the only currency that mattered. She would be heartbroken if she were here. But she wasn't here. I was, and I had to be the one to drop the hammer. Clayton, Lawrence said, breaking my silence. I found something else in the Kingsley file. It is the prenup draft. They have a prenup, I asked. Surprised they had enough assets to protect. It is not to protect them, Lawrence said. It is to trap Justin. It stipulates that in the event of divorce, Justin assumes 50% of the Kingsley family debt. They are trying to pin their bankruptcy on him legally. He hasn't signed it yet, but the notary is bringing it tonight along with the deed transfer. They were going to enslave him. They were going to take my farm, pay off their debts, and then saddle my idiot son with the rest of their financial ruin. They were going to eat him alive. For a moment, a flicker of fatherly instinct flared up. I should warn him. I should drag him out of there and show him the files. I should save him. But then I remembered his grip on my arm. I remembered his whisper about the nursing home. I remembered the bleach and cabbage. He had made his choice. He had chosen his side. He had chosen the vipers over the man who raised him. Send me the files, Lawrence, I commanded. All of it. The foreclosure, the embezzlement evidence, the medical records, and the prenup draft. Send it to my phone now. And Lawrence, yes, Clayton. Bring the car around. Not the pickup, the town car. The one with the tinted windows. And bring the security team, the ones we use for hostile takeovers. Security, Lawrence asked. Are you expecting violence? I am expecting a massacre. I said, my voice cold as the grave. I am going to walk back in there, and I am going to peel the skin off every single one of them. I am going to show them exactly who the stinky country boy really is. I hung up the phone. It vibrated seconds later as the files downloaded. I scrolled through them. The evidence was damning. It was irrefutable. It was ammunition. I adjusted my tie, tightening the knot until it felt like a noose. I smoothed my hair back. I looked at my boots. The mud was still there, drying and cracking. Good, I thought. Let them see the mud. Let them think it is weakness one last time. I unlocked the bathroom door. The noise of the party rushed in to meet me, laughter music, the clinking of glasses. The sound of people celebrating a fraud. I stepped out into the hallway. I walked toward the ballroom doors. My son was waiting for his inheritance. The Kingsleys were waiting for their bailout. Harper was waiting for her penthouse. I was bringing them a foreclosure notice and a pair of handcuffs. The country boy was coming back to the table. And this time he wasn't asking for permission to sit. He was flipping the table over. I looked down at the illuminated screen of the satellite phone in my hand, and the last remnant of hope I held for my son finally died. The medical file Lawrence had sent was comprehensive. It detailed a prenatal checkup from just 3 days ago. The fetus was 16 weeks old, 4 months. I did the math again, even though I knew the dates by heart. Justin had introduced me to Harper 8 weeks ago. He had told me they met at a charity gala 2 weeks prior to that. 10 weeks total. The math was brutal and unforgiving. Unless my son had mastered the ability to bend time, Harper was 2 months pregnant before she ever shook his hand. But that was not the knife that severed the cord between father and son. The knife was the email chain Lawrence had attached to the file. It was a thread between Justin and Harper from a week ago. Harper had written, "My mother is freaking out about the dates, Justin. If your dad counts the months on his fingers, we are dead. And Justin, my boy." The child I had raised to value truth above all else had replied, "Oh, don't worry about the old man. He can barely count his own cows. And honestly, I don't care who put it there as long as the Kingsley name is on the birth certificate. It is my ticket to the boardroom, Harper. I would raise a goat if it meant getting that VP title." He knew. He wasn't a victim of paternity fraud. He was a willing participant. He was selling his dignity, his name, and his father's legacy for a title at a company that was technically bankrupt. He was accepting another man's child not out of love or charity, but as a transaction, a toll fee on the road to the high life. I felt a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with the stale air of the bathroom. I put the phone away. The anger that had been cold and sharp was now heavy and suffocating. I washed my face one last time, staring at the water swirling down the drain, just like my son's life was about to. I stepped out of the bathroom, and Justin was there waiting. He was pacing back and forth, his patent leather shoes clicking nervously on the marble. He looked like a man on the edge of a cliff. When he saw me, he didn't look relieved. He looked manic. "We are leaving," he snapped, grabbing my arm again. "Leaving," I asked, playing the confused old man but keeping my muscles tense, ready for a fight. "But the cake. The party." "Forget the party," Justin hissed, dragging me toward the side exit. "Too many eyes. Too many distractions. You are stalling Dad, and I am done with it. We are going to see Mr. Blackwood." "Who is Mr. Blackwood?" I asked, digging my heels in slightly, just to annoy him. "He is the lawyer," Justin said, shoving me through the service doors into the humid night air. "He is going to notarize the deed transfer properly. No more stage shows. No more speeches. Just ink on paper." A black sedan pulled up. It wasn't the limo they had arrived in. It was a nondescript sedan, the kind you rent when you don't want to be remembered. Justin opened the back door and pushed me in. He climbed in beside me and barked an address to the driver. The car smelled of stale cigarettes and cheap pine air freshener. We sped away from the hotel, leaving the lights and the music behind. I looked at Justin. He was staring out the window, his leg bouncing uncontrollably. He was sweating through his tuxedo shirt. "So this lawyer," I said, keeping my voice low and trembling. "Is he a friend of yours?" "He is a facilitator," Justin muttered, not looking at me. "He gets things done fast." We drove for 20 minutes, leaving the manicured lawns of the hotel district and entering the industrial outskirts of the city. The buildings here were low and squat warehouses with barred windows and flickering neon signs. We pulled into a strip mall that had seen better decades. A laundromat, a liquor store, and a door with a peeling vinyl sign that read, "Blackwood Legal Services." "This doesn't look like a place for a wedding gift, son," I said, clutching my lapels. "It is fine," Justin snapped, opening the door. "Get out." We walked into the office. It smelled of old coffee and desperation. There were stacks of files on the floor, overflowing ashtrays, and a water cooler that looked like it hadn't been cleaned since the 90s. Behind a desk that was more scratches than wood sat Mr. Blackwood. He was a small man, with thinning hair and a suit that was 2 sizes too big. He looked like a ferret in a polyester sack. "Is this him?" Blackwood asked, not bothering to stand up. "This is him," Justin said, closing the door and locking it. Blackwood looked me up and down, his eyes lingering on my muddy boots. "He looks out of it. Is he lucid?" "He is lucid enough to sign his name," Justin said, pulling a chair out for me. "Sit down, Dad." I sat. The chair wobbled. "Here is the situation," Blackwood said, sliding a document across the desk. It wasn't the same fancy paper from the stage. This was a standard legal form dense with text. "Quitclaim deed," Blackwood droned. "Transfer of property located at County Road 9. Title moves from Clayton Forrester to Justin Forrester. Consideration of $10. $10, I whispered, leaning in to squint at the paper. "But the farm is worth—" "It is a formality, Dad." Justin interrupted, slamming his hand on the desk. "It is a gift, remember. You are giving it to me for the baby." "Ah, yes, the baby," I said, looking up at him. "My grandchild." I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Guilt, maybe. Or maybe just fear. "Yes, the grandchild," he said. "Harper is stressed, Dad. She needs security. This farm is the only way we can afford a home for that baby." I looked down at the paper again. I wasn't just looking for the signature line. I was reading the clauses, and there it was, buried in paragraph 4. Grantee reserves the right to immediate liquidation of assets, including subsurface mineral rights and existing timber contracts. He wasn't just selling the land. He was selling the earth beneath it. He was selling the soul of the property. And he was doing it for $10. I looked at Blackwood. "Is this legal?" I asked, selling a multi-million-dollar property for $10. Blackwood shrugged, lighting a cigarette. "If you sign it, it is legal. It is a private transaction between family members. The IRS might ask questions later, but by then the title will be washed." Washed. He was talking about my home like it was dirty money. Justin uncapped a pen and shoved it into my hand. "Sign it, Dad. We don't have all night. The party is waiting." I held the pen hovering over the paper. I decided to give him one last chance. One final opportunity to be a human being. "Son," I said softly, "I know about the money." Justin froze. "What money?" "I know you are in trouble. I know about the $200,000 you took from your company." His face drained of color. He looked at Blackwood, then back at me. "I don't know what you are talking about," he stammered, but his voice was high and thin. "I know you are scared," I continued. "I know you are drowning. But this isn't the way. Selling the farm, that is permanent. We can figure something else out." "I have some savings." He laughed, a harsh barking sound. "Savings? You keep your money in a coffee can, Dad. You have nothing. That farm is the only thing of value you have ever touched, and you are too stupid to even monetize it. You sit on a gold mine and you plant corn. You are a waste." The words hung in the air, foul and toxic. "So that is what you think of me," I said quietly. "A waste. I think you are an anchor," Justin shouted, losing his composure completely. "You dragged Mom down with your simple life, and now you are dragging me down. I am meant for better things, Dad. I am meant for the penthouse. I am meant for the country club, and I am taking what is mine." "And the baby," I asked, "is the baby yours?" He stopped. He looked away, his jaw working. "It is my ticket," he whispered. "It is my baby now. Does it matter where it came from?" It gets me in the door. He grabbed my hand, the one holding the pen, and forced it down onto the paper. "Sign it," he roared. "Sign it, or I swear I will have you declared incompetent before the sun comes up. I have the doctors lined up, Dad. I have the paperwork ready. You sign this, and you can live in the guest room at the penthouse. You refuse, and you go to the state home. Choose." The physical force of his hand on mine was shocking. He was hurting me. He was actually hurting me. I looked at the tip of the pen touching the paper. A tiny dot of ink started to bleed into the fiber. I took a deep breath. I looked at Blackwood, who was watching with bored indifference. I looked at my son, who was panting like a wild animal. "Okay," I said, letting my voice go flat. "Okay, I will sign." Justin relaxed his grip slightly. "Good. Good choice, Dad. Just sign right there." I started to write. C-L-A. Then I stopped. "What is wrong?" Justin asked, tension spiking again. "This pen," I said, lifting it up. "It is out of ink." "It is not out of ink," Justin screamed. "I just used it." "Look," I said, scratching it on the side of the paper. Nothing coming out. Justin groaned, a sound of pure frustration. He grabbed the pen from me and scribbled furiously on a notepad. Ink flowed perfectly. "It works fine. You are just not pressing hard enough." He shoved it back at me. "Try again." I leaned in closer. "Actually," I said, my voice changing. The tremor gone. The confusion gone. "Actually, I think I need to read the indemnity clause again. Paragraph 7 looks a little tricky." Justin stared at me. He blinked. "What did you say?" "Indemnity," I said clearly. "And the liability waiver in Section 9. It seems to absolve Mr. Blackwood here of any malpractice in the event of coercion. That is not standard practice, is it, Counselor?" Blackwood sat up straight, his cigarette falling from his mouth. "Who are you?" he asked, narrowing his eyes. I stood up. I didn't push the chair back. I kicked it back. It hit the wall with a crash. "I am the man who owns the building you are sitting in, Mr. Blackwood," I said, my voice filling the small room. "I bought the mortgage on this strip mall 3 years ago through a shell company. You are 3 months behind on your rent." Blackwood looked at his computer screen, then back at me, terror dawning on his face. "And you, Justin," I said, turning to my son. "You are not just a thief, you are a fool." "Dad." "What are you doing?" Justin whispered, backing away. I pulled out my phone. I tapped the screen. "Lawrence, send them in." The front door of the office didn't just open. It was kicked in. 2 large men in dark suits stepped in. They weren't police. They were my private security detail. "Secure the files," I ordered, pointing at Blackwood's desk. "And hold him until the police arrive." "Police," Justin squeaked. "Oh yes, son," I said, walking around the desk to stand toe-to-toe with him. "We are not going to the penthouse. We are going to have a little chat with the district attorney about that $200,000 you stole." "But the farm, the baby." "The farm is safe," I said, picking up the unsigned deed and ripping it into shreds. "The baby isn't yours. And you are barely my son anymore." I threw the confetti of paper into his face. "Now get in the car. We are going back to the party. I have one more speech to give. And this time, I won't need a microphone." The air in the small office was stagnant, heavy with the smell of stale tobacco and the sour scent of my son's desperation. The cheap fluorescent light overhead buzzed like a dying insect, flickering every few seconds, casting long, twitching shadows against the peeling beige paint. I sat in the wobbly wooden chair, my posture slumped, my mouth slightly open, playing the part of the confused old man to perfection. But behind the watery gaze, my mind was a steel trap, calculating every second, measuring every drop of sweat that rolled down Justin's temple. "Just sign the paper, Dad." Justin hissed, his finger jabbing at the signature line so hard the paper crinkled. We have been here for 20 minutes. The notary is waiting. The guests are waiting. Harper is waiting. I looked at the document. It was a quitclaim deed designed to strip me of the Forrester farm, the land my grandfather cleared with an axe and a mule, the land that held $15 million worth of mineral rights beneath its soil. Justin saw a quick payday. I saw a trap, and I was about to snap it shut on his fingers. I reached for the pen, my hand trembling with an exaggerated palsy. I hovered the tip over the line. "Right here, son," I asked, my voice quavering. "Yes, right there, Justin." Justin groaned, running a hand through his hair. "Just write your name." "Clayton Forrester. It is not a calculus exam." I touched the pen to the paper. I wrote a C, then an L. Then I stopped. I lifted the pen and looked at it with a furrowed brow. "Is this blue ink?" I asked, looking up at Mr. Blackwood, the disheveled lawyer who was watching the clock with bored indifference. Blackwood sighed, exhaling a cloud of smoke. "It is black ink, Mr. Forrester. Just sign the damn thing." "I always sign legal documents in blue," I mumbled, shifting in the chair. "Beatrice, my late wife, God rest her soul, always told me blue is for binding. Black is for photocopies." "Do you have a blue pen?" Justin slammed his fist onto the desk, making the stapler jump. "It does not matter, Dad. Black. Blue. Red. Blood. I don't care, just sign the paper." I recoiled, shrinking back into the chair, acting terrified of his outburst. Inside, I was cold. I was memorizing this. The way he looked at me, not as a father, but as an obstacle. A stubborn mule that needed to be whipped. Okay, I whispered. "No need to shout. I am just trying to do it right." I lowered the pen again. I started to write. This time I moved the pen with agonizing slowness, the tip scratching against the cheap paper. I wrote my first name. Then I paused. I looked at the line below it where it said grantee. "Wait a minute," I said, squinting. "This says Justin Forrester. But Harper said the farm was for the baby. Shouldn't the baby's name be here?" Justin closed his eyes, taking a deep breath that shuddered in his chest. "The baby is not born yet, Dad. A baby cannot own property. I am holding it in trust. We talked about this. Sign the paper." I nodded slowly, as if processing complex information. Right. In trust. Okay." I put the pen back down. I signed my last name. But as I finished the R, I let my hand slip. The pen dragged down across the page, slashing through the notary block and tearing a hole in the bottom of the document. "Oops," I said, staring at the tear. My hand slipped. "Is that okay?" Blackwood snatched the paper from under my hand. He looked at it and threw it into the trash can. "It is ruined," he muttered. "The signature crosses the seal line. It is void. I have to print another one." He turned to his computer, typing with 2 fingers. The printer in the corner whirred to life, grinding and clunking. The door to the office flew open with a bang. Harper stood there. She was still in her white engagement dress, but she looked less like a bride and more like a fury. Her makeup was starting to crease around her eyes, and her lips were pulled back in a snarl. She had been waiting in the car, and her patience had evidently evaporated. "What is taking so long?" she screamed, stepping into the cramped room. "It has been half an hour, Justin. My parents are texting me every 30 seconds. They think he ran away. He messed up the signature," Justin said, his voice pleading. "We are printing a new one." Harper turned her gaze on me. It was a look of pure, unadulterated hatred. "You useless old idiot," she spat. "Can you do one thing right, just one thing? We are trying to help you. We are trying to get you into a nice home where people can wipe your chin for you, and you are making this impossible." I looked down at my hands, letting them shake. "I am sorry, Harper," I mumbled. "My eyes are bad. The light's in here." "Shut up," she snapped, cutting me off. "I don't want to hear your excuses. I want the deed." She marched over to the desk, grabbing a bottle of water that was sitting there. She took a swig and slammed it down uncapped next to the printer. Blackwood pulled the fresh document from the tray. "Here," he grunted, sliding it in front of me. "Try not to butcher this one." I took the pen again. Justin leaned over my shoulder, his breathing heavy. Harper stood on the other side, tapping her foot, a rapid staccato rhythm on the linoleum floor. They were crowding me, boxing me in. I leaned forward, squinting at the paper. I moved my elbow. It was a calculated movement, precise and deliberate, disguised as a clumsy adjustment. My elbow hit the open water bottle. It tipped over. The water didn't just spill, it surged. It washed over the desk, soaking the fresh document, instantly turning the paper into a soggy gray pulp. It dripped down the side of the desk onto Blackwood's lap. Blackwood jumped up, cursing a string of obscenities. Justin let out a sound that was half scream, half sob. "Oh no," I gasped, standing up and grabbing a handful of tissues from a box, dabbing uselessly at the mess. "Oh dear, I am so clumsy. I am so sorry." Harper exploded. She didn't just yell. She lunged. She grabbed the lapels of my old suit jacket and shook me. Her face was inches from mine, twisted into a mask of ugliness that no amount of makeup could hide. "You senile old parasite!" she shrieked, spittle flying from her mouth. "You are doing this on purpose, aren't you? You are too stupid to live. You smell like manure, and you act like a toddler." I looked past her screaming face. I looked at Justin. He was standing there watching. He saw his fiancée physically assaulting his father. He saw her shaking an old man, calling him a parasite. And he did nothing. He didn't pull her off. He didn't defend me. He just looked at the ruined paper with a look of mourning, as if the paper were his child, and I were the murderer. "Justin," I said, my voice soft pleading. "Are you going to let her talk to me like that?" Justin looked up. His eyes were dead. "Just print another one, Blackwood," he said coldly. "And Dad, sit down and shut up. You are going to sign it if we have to stay here all night." That was the moment. That was the final nail in the coffin. If there had been a single ember of love left in my heart for my son, he extinguished it right there. He was complicit in my abuse. He was an active participant in my humiliation. I gently removed Harper's hands from my jacket. I did it with a firmness that surprised her. She stumbled back slightly, looking confused by the sudden strength in my grip. I sat back down. I adjusted my tie. "I cannot sign a wet paper," I said, my voice finding a new rhythm. A slower, more stubborn rhythm. "And I cannot sign a document without my reading glasses." "I told you that at the party." "We don't have your glasses," Justin yelled. "Then we have a problem," I said calmly, because I also realized something else. The deed to the farm. The original one. It is in the safe at the house. So what Justin asked. So I continued, looking him dead in the eye. "Mr. Blackwood here needs the parcel identification number from the original deed to file the transfer correctly. Otherwise, the county clerk will reject it. You know how bureaucracy is, son." I looked at Blackwood. He hesitated. He knew I was technically right, although he could probably look it up online. But he was tired, wet, and annoyed. "He is right," Blackwood grunted, wiping water off his pants. "I need the parcel ID to verify the boundaries. If the numbers don't match, the title transfer bounces." Justin looked like he was about to scream. He looked at his watch. "We don't have time to go to the farm. It is 40 minutes away." "Then I guess we don't have a deal," I said, crossing my arms. "I am not signing anything until I have my glasses and you have the right numbers. I want this done legally, Justin, for the baby." I saw the wheels turning in his head. He was trapped. He needed the sale tonight. He needed the money. Fine, he spat. Fine. We will go to the house. We will get your stupid glasses and the damn deed, and then you will sign it on the kitchen table. He grabbed my arm and yanked me up. Move! I stood up. I let him drag me toward the door. Harper was pacing furiously, texting on her phone, probably lying to her parents. I walked out into the cool night air. I took a deep breath. They thought they were taking me to a second location to force my hand. They thought they were dragging a helpless old man to his doom. They didn't know that the farmhouse wasn't just my home. It was my fortress. And I wasn't going there to get my glasses. I was taking them there to introduce them to the consequences of their actions. I got into the back seat of Justin's car. I watched the city lights fade as we drove toward the darkness of the country. Drive fast, son, I whispered to myself. The sheriff is already on his way. The gravel road leading to the farmhouse was not built for speed, but my son was driving like he was trying to outrun the devil himself. From the front porch where I stood in the darkness, I watched the twin beams of his headlights violently cutting through the cornfields, bouncing erratically as his sedan bottomed out on the ruts. He wasn't coming home. He was invading. I had barely stepped out of his car when he slammed the door shut and stomped up the wooden stairs, the old boards groaning under the assault of his expensive dress shoes. He didn't knock. He didn't say hello. He kicked the front door open with a force that rattled the window panes. "Where is it?" he screamed, his voice cracking with hysteria. "Where is the damn deed, Dad?" He looked wild. His tuxedo tie was undone, hanging around his neck like a broken noose. His hair was plastered to his forehead with sweat, and his eyes were bloodshot. Manic darting around the living room, as if the walls were closing in on him. He smelled of fear and top-shelf bourbon, a toxic cologne that filled the clean country air of my home. I stayed calm, leaning against the doorframe of the kitchen. I watched him. I didn't move to help him, and I didn't move to stop him. I just watched. "It is in the safe, Justin," I said quietly. "The one you don't know the combination to." He let out a guttural roar, a sound that belonged to a wounded animal, not a corporate executive. He didn't ask for the combination. He didn't try to reason with me. He simply exploded. He lunged at the bookshelf near the fireplace. It was an old oak piece I had built with my own hands 30 years ago, filled with almanacs, history books, and the photo albums that chronicled our family history. With a sweep of his arm, he sent the books flying. They crashed to the floor, spines breaking, pages tearing. "I need that paper," he yelled, tearing the drawers out of the desk and dumping their contents onto the rug. "I need it tonight. Do you understand? They are going to kill me, Dad. If I don't pay them, they are going to kill me." He was tearing through the house like a tornado. He overturned the coffee table. He ripped the cushions off the sofa. He was looking for a key, a piece of paper, anything that would save him from the consequences of his own greed. I stood there like a statue. Every item he broke was a memory being desecrated. The lamp he knocked over was the one Beatrice used to read by. The rug he was stomping on with his muddy shoes was the one she had braided during the winter of '92. He was destroying our history, searching for his future. "Justin, stop this," I said, my voice low but hard. "You are destroying your mother's home." He stopped. He turned to look at me, and for a second I thought he heard me. I thought the mention of his mother might penetrate the fog of his panic, but I was wrong. He walked over to the mantel above the fireplace. This was the heart of the house. It was where I kept the shrine to Beatrice. Her urn was there, a simple ceramic vessel painted with wildflowers. Next to it was her wedding photo, the glass clear and polished. There was a small wooden box containing her favorite locket and the dried rose from our first anniversary. Justin looked at the shrine. He was breathing hard, his chest heaving. He picked up the wedding photo. He looked at the smiling face of the woman who had birthed him, who had nursed him through fevers, who had loved him more than life itself. And then he laughed. It was a cold, broken sound. Mom, he whispered. Saint Beatrice. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a hatred so pure it took my breath away. She is the reason you are like this, isn't she? He spat. You are holding on to this dirt because of her. You think this farm is some kind of holy ground because she walked on it. Put the picture down, Justin, I warned, taking a step forward. My hands balled into fists at my sides. No, he screamed, raising the frame above his head. No more shrines. No more ghosts. She is dead, Dad. She is rotting in the ground. She doesn't care about the farm. She doesn't care about me. She is dead. Don't do it, son, I said, my voice trembling with a rage I had never felt before. If you break that, there is no going back. He looked me dead in the eye. He wanted to hurt me. He wanted to break me the way he felt broken. She is dead, he shrieked. But I am alive. I am your son, and I am drowning, and you are hugging a ghost. Sell this garbage. Sell it all and save me. He threw the picture. It didn't just fall. He threw it with all his strength against the brick hearth. The sound was explosive. The glass shattered into 1,000 glittering diamonds spreading across the floor. The frame snapped. The photo of Beatrice, young and beautiful, landed face down in the ash of the fireplace. He didn't stop there. He swept his arm across the mantel, knocking the wooden box to the floor. The locket skittered across the hardwood. The dried rose disintegrated into dust under his heel. It is all junk, he screamed, kicking the debris. Just junk. Old sentimental trash. Where is the deed? Where is the money? I looked at the shattered glass. I looked at the dust of the rose. I looked at the face of my wife lying in the soot. And in that moment, something inside me died. The father in me, the man who had made excuses for his son, who had paid his debts, who had loved him unconditionally, simply ceased to exist. The flame of paternal love was snuffed out instantly, replaced by a cold, dark void. The man standing in front of me, panting and sweating, was not my son. He was a stranger. He was a vandal. He was a monster who had broken into my sanctuary and defiled the only thing I held sacred. I walked over to the fireplace. I did not look at him. I knelt down, ignoring the creaking of my knees, and carefully picked up the photo from the ashes. I brushed the soot off Beatrice's face. I picked up the locket. Get out, I said. Justin blinked, confused by the sudden quiet in the room. What? Get out, I repeated. I did not shout. My voice was a whisper, but it carried the weight of a judge passing a death sentence. Get out of my house. Get off my land. But the deed. Justin stammered, the adrenaline starting to fade, leaving him shaking. The wedding. Harper. If you are not gone in 10 seconds, I said, standing up and turning to face him, I will get the shotgun from the cabinet. And unlike you, I do not miss. He looked into my eyes. He saw the void. He saw that the well of forgiveness had finally run dry. He saw a man who was no longer a father, but a force of nature. He backed away. He held up his hands. You are crazy, he muttered, stumbling over the books he had thrown. You are a crazy old man. You are going to let them kill me. You are choosing a dead woman over your own son. I choose honor, I said. Now get out. He turned and ran. He scrambled out the front door, tripping on the porch steps. I heard his car door slam. I heard the engine roar to life. I heard the tires spinning on the gravel, throwing stones as he sped away, back to the city, back to his lies, back to the doom he had created for himself. I stood alone in the silence of the wrecked living room. The air was still thick with his violence. I looked down at the photo in my hand. The glass was gone, but the image remained. Beatrice was smiling. She looked happy. She looked proud. I am sorry, Bea. I whispered, my thumb tracing her cheek. I tried. I really tried. But he is gone. The boy we raised, is gone. I walked to the kitchen. I did not clean up the mess, not yet. I wanted to remember this. I wanted to sear this image into my brain so that I would never, ever weaken again. I pulled out the satellite phone. My hand was steady. My heart was slowing down, returning to a rhythm of cold calculation. I dialed Lawrence. He answered on the first ring, as always. He must have been waiting, expecting the worst. "Clayton, are you all right?" Lawrence asked, his voice tight. "I am fine," I said. "But the plan has changed." Changed how Lawrence asked. "There is no mercy left, Lawrence. None. I want you to initiate Protocol B." "Protocol B?" Lawrence paused. "Clayton, that is the nuclear option. That is total destruction. That destroys his reputation, his career, his freedom. There is no coming back from that." I looked at the shattered remains of the shrine. "He broke the picture, Lawrence." I said, my voice flat. "He smashed Beatrice's picture. He called her memory garbage." I heard Lawrence inhale sharply on the other end of the line. He knew what Beatrice meant to me. He knew that was the one line that could never be crossed. "Understood," Lawrence said, his tone shifting from lawyer to executioner. "I will alert the team. We will have everything ready for the wedding. I want it public," I said. "I want it loud. I want everyone to see. I want the police waiting in the wings. I want the press if you can get them." "I can get them," Lawrence confirmed. "And the assets," I continued. "Freeze everything. The trust fund, the safety net, the hidden accounts I set up for him. Freeze it all. I want him to walk onto that stage thinking he is about to become a millionaire, and I want him to leave in handcuffs with nothing but the shirt on his back. It will be done, Clayton. And Lawrence. Yes. Make sure the Kingsleys are there too. I want them to see it. I want them to see their golden goose get slaughtered. I want them to know that they picked a fight with the wrong farmer. I will handle it. Get some rest, Clayton. Tomorrow is going to be a long day." "I won't rest," I said. "I have a house to clean." I hung up the phone. I looked around the room. I saw the chaos, the destruction, the disrespect. I walked to the closet and got a broom. I started to sweep. I swept up the glass. I swept up the dust of the rose. I swept up the last 20 years of my life. With every stroke of the broom, I hardened my heart a little more. I was sweeping away the doubt. I was sweeping away the guilt. Tomorrow I wouldn't be the father of the groom. I wouldn't be the stinky country boy. Tomorrow I would be the storm. I picked up the photo of Beatrice and placed it gently on the kitchen table. "Watch me be," I whispered to the empty room. "Watch me finish this." I walked out onto the porch and looked at the fields. The corn was high, swaying in the moonlight. The land was quiet, eternal. It had survived droughts and floods and storms. It would survive Justin. But Justin wouldn't survive me. I went back inside and started to prepare my suit. Not the old gray one. The black one. The one I bought for funerals. Because tomorrow I was going to bury my son. Not in the ground, but in the truth. The Emerald Bay Resort was a monument to excess, a sprawling palace of glass and steel perched on the cliffs, overlooking the ocean. It was the kind of place where a glass of water cost $12, and the air conditioning smelled like vanilla and money. 500 guests filled the grand ballroom, a sea of black ties and designer gowns swirling under chandeliers that were the size of tractors. I stood outside the double mahogany doors, adjusting the cuffs of my shirt. It was Egyptian cotton, white as fresh milk and soft as a cloud. Over it, I wore a tuxedo that had been hand-tailored in Milan 3 years ago for a state dinner I attended as a silent investor. It was midnight blue wool cut to fit my broad shoulders perfectly, without a single crease or pull. My boots, the muddy work boots that had earned me the mockery of this crowd earlier, were gone. In their place, I wore Oxfords made of cordovan leather, polished to a black mirror shine that reflected the lights overhead. I turned to Lawrence, who stood beside me, looking like the Grim Reaper in a three-piece suit. He held a leather briefcase that contained the destruction of 3 lives. Behind us stood 4 men. They were not hotel security. They were private contractors, former military men, who worked for the security division of Forrester Enterprises. They were big, silent, and they looked like they could walk through a brick wall without breaking stride. "Are you ready?" Clayton Lawrence asked, his voice low. I ran a hand over my freshly shaved jaw. The grease was gone. The stubble was gone. The smell of the farm was gone, replaced by the faint scent of sandalwood and cold, hard cash. "I am ready," I said. "Open the doors." The security team moved forward, pushing the heavy doors open with a synchronized smoothness. The noise of the party spilled out a wall of laughter and clinking crystal. I stepped through the threshold. The effect was instantaneous. It started with the tables nearest the door. The guests turned, expecting to see a waiter or perhaps a late arrival. Instead, they saw a phalanx of men in dark suits moving with military precision. And in the center of them, they saw me. The whispers started like a brush fire. "Who is that?" someone asked. Is that the father?" The woman whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. "No, it can't be. He was wearing rags." I walked down the center aisle. I did not rush. I walked with the slow, measured gait of a man who owns the ground he walks on. I looked straight ahead, my eyes locked on the stage where my son and his bride were holding court. Justin was laughing, holding a champagne flute high. He looked relaxed, triumphant. He thought I was at the farm crying over a broken picture frame. He thought he had won. Then he saw me. His glass stopped halfway to his mouth. His smile faltered, twitching at the corners. He squinted, trying to reconcile the image of the beaten old man he had threatened hours ago with the Titan walking toward him now. Harper saw me a second later. Her jaw actually dropped. She looked at my suit, then at my shoes, then at the security team flanking me. I saw the confusion in her eyes, followed quickly by a flicker of fear. She was a predator, and predators know when a bigger beast enters their territory. The music didn't stop this time, but it seemed to fade into the background as the hush spread through the room. 500 people stopped drinking, stopped eating, and stopped talking. All eyes were on the transformation. The stinky country boy was gone. In his place was a man who radiated power. I walked past the Kingsley table. Victoria was holding a forkful of cake halfway to her mouth. She stared at me, her eyes bulging. I didn't look at her. I didn't acknowledge her existence. She was beneath my notice now. Richard Kingsley, however, looked terrified. He recognized the look of a man who was coming to collect a debt. He shrank in his seat, trying to make himself small. I reached the base of the stage. The security team fanned out, blocking the stairs, ensuring no one could rush me. Lawrence stepped up beside me, placing the briefcase on a side table with a heavy thud. I looked up at Justin. He looked down at me. He looked like a child who had just realized the monster in the closet was real. "Dad," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the low hum of the band. What are you wearing?" I walked up the stairs. Every step was a drumbeat. I stepped onto the stage into the bright lights. This time I didn't squint. I didn't cower. I stood tall, towering over him. I took the microphone from the stand. I didn't ask for it. I took it. The feedback whined for a split second, then cleared. I looked out at the crowd. I saw their curiosity. I saw their judgment shifting into awe. Justin stepped toward me, his hands shaking. "Dad, you can't be here," he hissed. His eyes darting to the security guards. "What is this? What are you doing? Go back to the farm." I looked at him. I looked at the sweat staining his collar. I looked at the fear behind his eyes. "The farm is closed, son," I said. my voice deep and resonant booming through the speakers. And I am not going anywhere. Harper rushed forward, grabbing Justin's arm. Get him off the stage, she hissed. He is ruining everything again. Look at him, he rented a tuxedo to try and impress us. It is pathetic. I turned to her. I looked at her dress, her hair, her fake smile. Rented, I repeated calmly. I reached into my inner pocket. I didn't pull out a speech. I pulled out a black silk handkerchief and dabbed my forehead. My dear, this tuxedo cost more than your father's car. And unlike your wedding dress, I paid for it in cash. A gasp went through the room. Harper turned red, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. Justin tried to grab the microphone, but one of my security guards stepped onto the stage, moving faster than a man of his size should be able to. He put a hand on Justin's chest, gently but firmly pushing him back. Do not touch him, the guard said, his voice flat and dangerous. Justin stumbled back, shock written all over his face. Dad, call them off, he pleaded. You are making a scene. People are watching. Let them watch, I said, turning back to the crowd. In fact, I want them to watch. You wanted a show, Justin. You wanted the country bumpkin to give you a gift. You wanted the deed to the farm. I signaled to Lawrence. He opened the briefcase. He pulled out a stack of documents, thick and heavy. Well, I am here to deliver. But I realized something on the drive over. A deed is just a piece of paper, and you deserve so much more than paper. You deserve the truth. I saw the Kingsleys stand up at their table. Richard was signaling frantically to the band to play louder, to cut the mic, to do something. But the band leader was staring at me, mesmerized. He didn't move. You wanted a legacy son, I continued, my voice hardening. You wanted the Forrester name to mean something in this town. Well, tonight I am going to show everyone exactly what that name means. And I am going to show them exactly who you are. Justin looked at the stack of papers in Lawrence's hand. He looked at the guards. He looked at me. And for the first time he realized that this wasn't a prank. It wasn't a senile episode. It was a reckoning. Dad, please, he whispered, tears starting to form in his eyes. Don't do this. Whatever it is, don't do it. I looked at him. I looked for the boy I loved. I looked for the son who used to ride beside me in the tractor. But he wasn't there. All I saw was the man who smashed his mother's picture. I turned to the projection screen behind us, the one that had been showing a slideshow of their fake happy couple photos. Lawrence, connect the drive, I ordered. Lawrence plugged a small drive into the laptop on the podium. The screen flickered. The photos of Justin and Harper vanished. In their place, a document appeared. It was blown up large enough for everyone in the back row to read. It was a medical report. I heard Harper scream, a high, piercing sound of absolute terror. No, stop it! Stop it! She shrieked, lunging for the laptop. My guard blocked her effortlessly. I looked at the crowd. You wanted a gift, I said into the microphone. Here is the first one. Let's talk about miracles, shall we? Specifically, the miracle of time travel. The room went deathly silent. The stinky country boy was holding court, and the trial had just begun. You want my land, son? I asked, my voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling of the ballroom. You want the dirt that you have been trying to scrub off your shoes for your entire adult life. Well, you can have it. But first, we are going to do a little reading. I pointed a steady finger at the massive projection screen behind me. The image of the medical report was crisp and unforgiving. It was a digital tombstone for my son's marriage before it had even begun. Look closely, everyone, I boomed. This is a prenatal ultrasound dated 3 days ago. Now I am just a simple farmer. I don't know much about fancy city calendars, but I do know how to count. The gestation age listed here is 16 weeks. 16 weeks. I turned to look at Justin. He was staring at the floor, his face a mask of misery. I knew he knew. He had accepted the lie because he was desperate. But Justin, I said, my voice softening just enough to draw him in. You already knew that, didn't you? You knew the math didn't add up. You were willing to be a father to another man's child because you thought it was your ticket into this family. You thought you were being noble, or maybe just practical. Justin looked up, a flicker of defiance in his eyes. It doesn't matter, Dad, he croaked. We love each other. Families are built on more than just biology. I nodded slowly. That is a beautiful sentiment, son. Truly. And if it were true, I would step down from this stage right now. I would sign the deed and I would wish you the best. But you see, Lawrence found something else. Something that proves family isn't the only thing being built here. I signaled Lawrence. He tapped a key on the laptop. The medical report vanished. In its place, a stream of text messages appeared. They were screenshots taken from a cloud backup Lawrence's team had accessed. They were conversations between Harper and a contact saved as Mike Jim. The gasps from the audience were audible. Harper let out a strangled cry and tried to rush the laptop again, but my security guard simply stepped in her path, a wall of black wool and muscle. No, she screamed, clawing at the air. Turn it off, you can't show that. It is private. Nothing is private when you try to swindle a man out of his legacy. My dear, I said coldly. I turned back to the screen and began to read. Here is a message from last Tuesday, just 3 days before you asked my son to marry you. I read the text loud and clear, my voice projecting to the back of the room. Mike asks, are you sure you can go through with this babe marrying that loser just for a house? I paused, letting the word loser hang in the air. I saw Justin flinch as if he had been slapped. And here is Harper's reply, I continued. Harper says, don't worry, baby. He is just a wallet with legs. As soon as his senile dad signs over the farm and we sell it, I will file for divorce. I will take half the cash and we will be set for life. I just have to let him touch me for a few months. Gross, but worth it. The silence in the ballroom was absolute. It was the silence of 500 people holding their breath at the same time. I looked at Justin. He wasn't looking at the floor anymore. He was looking at the screen, his mouth open, his eyes wide and vacant. The color had drained from his face, leaving him looking like a wax figure. He had known about the baby. He had accepted the baby. But he didn't know this. He didn't know he was a temporary fix. He didn't know she found him repulsive. He didn't know the woman he was selling his soul for was planning to discard him like a used wrapper the moment the check cleared. Justin, I said quietly, my voice dropping to a register of pure sorrow. She wasn't going to make you a king. She was going to make you a casualty. Justin turned slowly toward Harper. He looked like a man waking up from a coma into a nightmare. You said, he whispered, his voice breaking. You said I was the only one who understood you. You said we were a team. Harper's face twisted. The mask of the blushing bride fell away completely, revealing the cornered animal underneath. Oh, grow up, Justin, she spat, her voice shrill and ugly. Look at you. You are a desperate little man with a criminal record and a daddy complex. Did you really think I loved you? Did you really think someone like me would settle for someone like you without a massive payoff? The cruelty of her words was breathtaking. It was a public evisceration. And then she laughed, a harsh barking sound. And your dad, look at him. He is playing the big shot now, but he is still just a dirt farmer in a rented suit. You are both pathetic. I smiled. It was a cold smile. Pathetic, I repeated. That is an interesting word choice, Harper. Especially coming from a woman whose entire future just evaporated on a projector screen. I gestured to Lawrence. Next slide. The text messages disappeared. A new document filled the screen. It was a legal filing stamped with the seal of the state court. You see, folks, I continued walking to the edge of the stage. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Harper didn't learn this behavior in a vacuum. She learned it from the best. I pointed a finger at the Kingsley table. Richard was shaking his head, muttering to himself. Victoria was fanning herself with a napkin, her face a shade of puce I had never seen before. "This brings me to my second gift," I announced. "A gift for my dear friends, Richard and Victoria." I turned to look at the screen, reading the bold header at the top of the document. "Notice of foreclosure and seizure of assets. The estate of Richard and Victoria Kingsley." A murmur ran through the crowd. This was their crowd. These were their friends, their country club peers, and they were seeing the Kingsleys stripped naked in the town square. I turned back to the Kingsleys. "You called me a stinky country boy," I said, my voice hard as granite. "You said I should be in a kennel. You laughed at my boots. But here is the funny thing, Richard. I own the dirt on my boots. I own the land it came from. I own the truck I drove here in." I took a step closer to the edge of the stage, looming over them. "You don't own anything. Not the house you live in. Not the cars you drove here. Not even the jewelry on your wife's neck." I pointed to the screen again. "According to this order signed by a judge this morning, your estate has been seized by the bank. The bank which, by a delightful twist of fate, happens to be a subsidiary of Forrester Holdings." Richard Kingsley stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. You own the bank," he stammered, his voice trembling. "I own the holding company that owns the bank," I corrected him. "And I reviewed your file personally this morning. It seems you are $400,000 in arrears on your property taxes, Richard, and you have defaulted on 3 consecutive mortgage payments." I looked at Victoria. She had stopped fanning herself. She was staring at me with the eyes of a deer in the headlights of a semi-truck. "You wanted to put me in a state-run nursing home?" "Victoria," I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You talked about bleach and cabbage. You wanted to lock me away so you could steal my farm to pay your debts." No, Victoria whispered, shaking her head. We were just... You were just parasites I finished for her. You are broke. You are destitute. You have been living on credit and lies for 2 years, waiting for a sucker like my son to bail you out." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It wasn't a speech. It was the physical copy of the eviction notice. "The sheriff is at your house right now," I said, holding the paper up. "They are changing the locks as we speak. Your assets have been frozen. Your cars are being towed." I tossed the paper off the stage. It fluttered through the air, landing softly in the center of their table, right in the middle of the spilled soup. "You are homeless," I said. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Victoria Kingsley let out a sound that wasn't quite a scream and wasn't quite a sob. It was the sound of a woman watching her entire identity disintegrate. Her eyes rolled back in her head. Her knees buckled. She collapsed sideways, sliding off her chair and hitting the floor with a heavy thud in a pile of silk and shame. Mom Harper screamed, running from the stage, but stopping halfway, torn between her exposed lies and her fallen mother. Richard Kingsley stood over his wife, looking down at her, then up at me, then around at the crowd. He saw the judgment in their eyes. He saw the disgust. The people he had tried to impress for decades were now looking at him like he was a contagion. "You ruined us," he whispered, his face gray. "You ruined everything." "I didn't ruin you, Richard," I said, my voice echoing in the silent room. "You ruined yourselves. I just turned on the lights." I looked at Justin. He was still standing on the stage alone. He looked from the screen with the text messages to his fiancée, who hated him, to his future in-laws, who were destroyed on the floor. He looked at me. "Dad," he whispered. "Dad, please." I didn't know about the texts. I didn't know she hated me. I looked at him. I saw the tears streaming down his face. I saw the pain, and for a second I wanted to comfort him. But then I remembered the smashed picture frame. I remembered the nursing home. I remembered the betrayal. "You knew enough, son," I said. "You knew enough to sell me out." I turned back to the crowd. "I am not done," I announced. "I have one more gift." I reached into the inside pocket of my tuxedo. Justin watched me, hope flaring in his eyes. He thought maybe, just maybe, I was going to save him. He thought I was going to pull out a checkbook and fix the mess. He thought I was still his safety net. I pulled out a slip of paper. It was a check. A check for $15 million. The proceeds from the mineral rights sale. Justin's eyes locked onto it. He recognized the bank logo. He recognized the zeros. "Dad," he gasped, taking a step toward me. Is that the money I held the check up for everyone to see?" "This is a certified bank check for $15 million, I said. "It is the money from the mineral rights on the farm. The farm my son thought was worthless. The farm he wanted to sell for pennies." Justin reached out his hand, trembling. "Dad, we can fix this. With that money, we can pay the debts. We can start over. Please. I am your son." I looked at the check. Then I looked at Justin. "You were my son," I said, "but the man standing in front of me, I don't know him. The man standing in front of me is a thief and a coward." I took the check in both hands. Justin's eyes widened in horror. "No. Dad, no." I ripped the check in half. The sound was sharp and final, like a bone snapping. Then I ripped it again, and again. I threw the pieces into the air. They rained down around Justin like confetti at a funeral. "This money was transferred this morning," I said, my voice cold and final. "It is gone, Justin. It is in the Beatrice Forrester Charitable Trust now. Every penny." Justin fell to his knees in the middle of the torn paper, sobbing. "Why?" he wailed. "Why would you do this?" "Because," I said, looking down at him with eyes that were dry and hard. "I would rather give it to strangers than let it fund your destruction." I looked toward the back of the room. The police officers Lawrence had brought were moving in. They weren't coming for the Kingsleys. They were coming for the stage. And now for the final act, I whispered to myself. The stinky country boy was done. Justice was about to be served, and it was going to be cold. You looked at the confetti of the eviction notice raining down on your future in-laws table, and then you looked at me. For a moment, the silence in the ballroom was so profound, I could hear the hum of the crystal chandeliers. You were on your knees, Justin, surrounded by the wreckage of your own ambition. Your face was wet with tears and sweat, your tuxedo shirt clinging to your chest like a shroud. You looked at Harper, who was huddled in the corner, furiously typing on her phone, likely trying to find a lawyer or a ride. You looked at the Kingsleys, who were statues of ruin. And then you looked back at me. Your eyes were pleading. They were the eyes of the boy who used to scrape his knees and come running to me for a bandage. They were begging for a lifeline. You thought that because I had exposed them, because I had destroyed the people dragging you down, that perhaps I was doing it to save you. You thought this was a rescue mission. You were wrong. This was an execution. I reached into the inner breast pocket of my midnight blue tuxedo. The movement was slow, deliberate. Every eye in the room followed my hand. I felt the crisp, heavy paper against my fingertips. I pulled it out. It was a check, a cashier's check, bank certified. I held it up to the light so the spotlight caught the watermark. I held it steady so the people in the front row could read the numbers. $15 million, I said, my voice calm, but carrying to every corner of the room. A gasp went up from the crowd. It was a physical sound, a sudden intake of breath from 500 people simultaneously realizing the magnitude of what they were seeing. This is the price of the dirt. Son, I continued walking to the edge of the stage until I was looming over him. This is the value of the mud you were so desperate to wash off your boots. This is the mineral rights to the South Pasture. This is the lithium deposit under the cornfields. This is the legacy you wanted to sell for $10. Justin's eyes widened until I thought they might burst. He scrambled to his feet, his movements jerky and uncoordinated. He reached out a trembling hand toward the paper. He saw his salvation. He saw his debts vanishing. He saw the penthouse. He saw the life he felt he was owed. Dad, he choked out, his voice a ragged whisper. Dad, please. That is enough. That is enough to fix everything. We can pay off the loan sharks. We can pay back the company. We can buy the house. We can start over. He took a step closer, his hand stretching out, desperate to touch the paper to verify it was real. I am sorry, I was so stupid, he babbled, the words tumbling out of his mouth in a torrent of panic. I was scared, Dad. They threatened me. I didn't know what to do. But with this we are free. We are Forrester's right. We survive. We win. Give it to me, Dad. Please. For the baby. I pulled the check back just an inch out of his reach. The baby, I repeated. The baby that isn't yours. The baby you were going to use as a prop to steal my land. It doesn't matter, Justin cried. I will raise it. I will do whatever you want. I will work on the farm. I will drive the tractor. Just please give me the check. I looked at him. I looked at the desperation etched into every line of his face. And for a split second, I remembered teaching him to ride a bike. I remembered his graduation. I remembered the pride I felt when he got his first job. But then the image changed. I saw him in my living room. I saw him raising the picture frame above his head. I saw the glass shattering. I heard him call his mother's memory garbage. The memory of Beatrice's face lying in the ash hardened my heart into stone. You don't get it, do you, Justin? I said softly. You think this is about money. You think this is a negotiation. I took the check in both hands. I held it up high so everyone could see it one last time. This money, I said, my voice rising, thundering through the speakers. This $15 million. It represents 3 generations of blood, sweat, and tears. It represents your grandfather's broken back. It represents my life. It represents your mother's love. Justin stopped reaching. He froze. He saw the tension in my fingers. No, he whispered. Dad. No. Don't. You wanted to sell it, I said. You wanted to trade it for a condo and a fake title. You wanted to erase us. I ripped the check. The sound was sharp, distinct, violent. It echoed through the silent ballroom like a gunshot. No. Justin screamed, a sound of pure agony, lunging forward. I ripped it again and again. I shredded the heavy paper into ribbons, into confetti, into worthless trash. I threw the pieces into the air. They fluttered down, drifting slowly, settling on Justin's shoulders, catching in his hair, landing on his expensive shoes. It is gone, I said, my voice cold and final. Justin fell to his knees, grasping at the pieces, trying to push them back together, trying to salvage his future from the floor. Why, he wailed, looking up at me with tears streaming down his face. Why would you do that? You just burned $15 million. You are crazy. You are a crazy old man. I am not crazy, son, I said, looking down at him with nothing but pity. And I didn't burn it. That was just a piece of paper. I pointed to the screen behind me one last time. Lawrence tapped a key. A bank transfer receipt appeared on the screen. It was time-stamped 9:00 a.m. that morning. The money left my account 6 hours ago, I explained. It was transferred in its entirety to the Beatrice Forrester Charitable Trust. The crowd murmured again. Justin stared at the screen, unable to comprehend. It is a permanent endowment. I continued. It will provide scholarships for agricultural students. It will fund rural hospitals. It will help families who actually respect the land. It will do all the good in the world that you refuse to do. You gave it away. Justin whispered, his voice hollow. You gave my inheritance to strangers. It wasn't your inheritance, I snapped, my patience finally snapping. It was my money. And I chose to give it to people who possess the one thing you lack. Honor. Justin slumped back, sitting on his heels amidst the torn paper. He looked broken. He looked finished. But I wasn't done. The payoff wasn't just about the money. It was about the consequences. I signaled to the back of the room. The 4 uniformed officers who had entered with Lawrence stepped forward. But they weren't alone. A man walked in behind them. He was tall, gray-haired, and wearing a suit that cost more than the Kingsleys' house. He looked furious. Justin turned around. He saw the man, and all the color that had returned to his face drained away again, leaving him ghostly white. "Mr. Sterling," he squeaked. Mr. Sterling, the CEO of the company Justin had worked for until 3 months ago, walked up to the edge of the stage. He didn't look at me. He looked straight at Justin. "Hello, Justin," Sterling said, his voice dripping with ice. "You stopped returning my calls. I was going to pay you." Justin stammered, trying to stand up but failing. "I had a plan. The farm is not yours." Sterling cut him off. "And the deadline was today. You told me you would have the $200,000 by close of business today, or I was to contact the authorities." Justin looked at me. "Dad, please. The trust. You can authorize a withdrawal. Just a loan. Please. He is going to send me to jail." I looked at my son. "I cannot authorize anything," I said. "The trust is irrevocable, and even if I could, I wouldn't." "Why?" Justin screamed. "Why do you hate me?" "I don't hate you," I said, feeling a single tear roll down my cheek. "I loved you enough to let you try. I loved you enough to let you fail. But I love your mother too much to let you use her legacy to cover up your crimes." I nodded to the officers. They stepped onto the stage. They pulled Justin to his feet. He didn't fight. He was limp, boneless. "Justin Forrester," one of the officers said, pulling a pair of handcuffs from his belt. "You are under arrest for grand larceny, embezzlement, and wire fraud." The sound of the handcuffs clicking shut was the loudest sound in the world. It was the sound of a door closing forever. Justin looked at me one last time as they began to lead him away. "Dad," he whispered, "help me." I looked at him. I looked at the mud on my boots. I looked at the ruined wedding cake. "I am a stinky country boy, Justin." I said, my voice breaking just a little. "My money is dirty. You wouldn't want it. You wanted to be a self-made man. Well, here you are. You made this." The officers marched him down the stairs. He walked past Harper, who refused to look at him. He walked past the Kingsleys, who were too busy weeping over their own ruin to notice him. He walked out the double doors and into the night. I stood alone on the stage. The check was torn. The truth was out. The farm was safe. I looked out at the silent crowd. "The party is over," I said. "Go home." I turned and walked off the stage. Lawrence was waiting for me. He handed me a handkerchief. I wiped my face. "Did we get him, Clayton?" Lawrence asked softly. "We got him," I said. But as I walked out into the cool night air, leaving the glitter and the gold behind, I didn't feel like a winner. I felt like a father who had just buried his son. But at least the farm was safe. At least Beatrice was safe. And tomorrow I had corn to plant. The echo of the torn check hitting the floor had barely faded when the officers moved. It wasn't a chaotic rush. It was a precise, practiced maneuver. Two officers flanked Justin, grabbing his arms before he could even process that his safety net had been shredded. The other two officers moved toward the Kingsley table not to arrest them, but to ensure they didn't try to flee the jurisdiction before the bankruptcy trustees arrived. Justin struggled weakly. He looked at the handcuffs glinting under the stage lights, and then he looked at me. His face was a map of disbelief. He had spent his entire life assuming that no matter how deep a hole he dug, I would always be there with a ladder. He thought my love was a weakness he could exploit forever. "Dad," he screamed as the first cuff clicked shut around his wrist. "Dad, stop them. Tell them it is a mistake. I am your son. You can't let them take me." I stood at the edge of the stage looking down at him. I saw the tears cutting tracks through the sweat on his face. I saw the terror in his eyes, and for a moment, I felt a phantom pain in my chest, the echo of the love I used to have for the boy who wanted to be an astronaut. But then I looked past him. I saw the guests watching in stunned silence. I saw Harper backing away, trying to blend into the shadows. I saw the ruins of the life he had tried to build on a foundation of lies. "You made this mistake, son," I said, my voice steady and cold. "You made it the moment you decided that my life was less valuable than your ambition." "Please, Dad," he wailed, dropping to his knees, dragging the officers down slightly with him. "Just pay the bail. Use your money. You have millions. You can fix this. I will pay you back. I swear. Just don't let me go to jail." I shook my head slowly. "I am just a stinky country boy, Justin," I said, repeating the words that had started this entire nightmare. "My money comes from dirt. It is dirty money. It is not good enough for a man in a tuxedo. It is not good enough for a vice president. It wouldn't be right for me to use my filthy farm money to save a clean city man like you." The cruelty of my own words tasted bitter but necessary. He needed to understand. He needed to feel the weight of the arrogance that had crushed him. Justin stared at me, his mouth opening and closing. He finally realized that the bridge was gone. He had burned it, and I wasn't going to rebuild it. "I hate you," he whispered, his voice filled with a venom that confirmed I had made the right choice. "I wish you were dead." "I know," I said, turning my back on him. "That is why we are here." The officers hauled him to his feet. They marched him down the stairs past the wedding cake that would never be cut, past the guests who were now taking photos with their phones. He was dragged out the double doors, screaming obscenities, his legacy reduced to a mugshot. I looked at Lawrence. He nodded. "Phase 2, he murmured. I turned my attention to Harper. She was near the service exit, trying to slip out unnoticed, but she wasn't fast enough. "Harper!" I called out, my voice booming over the microphone one last time. "Leaving so soon. You haven't received your gift yet." She froze. She turned around, her face a mask of pure hatred. "Go to hell, old man," she spat. "You ruined my life." "I didn't ruin your life," I said. "I just introduced you to reality. And speaking of reality, there is someone here who would like to have a word with you." The service doors opened. A young man walked in. He was muscular, wearing a gym t-shirt and jeans. He looked out of place in the ballroom, but he walked with a purpose. It was Mike, the personal trainer, the real father. Harper's face went white. "Mike," she gasped. "What are you doing here?" "I invited him," I said. "Lawrence found him. We showed him the text messages, Harper. We showed him where you said you were going to divorce Justin and take the money back to him. We showed him the medical records." Mike walked up to her. He didn't look angry. He looked sad, and he was holding a stack of papers. "You told me you lost the baby," Mike said, his voice shaking. "You told me it was a miscarriage. You told me that was why you had to leave to heal." Harper backed away, shaking her head frantically. No, Mike, I can explain. It was complicated. I did it for us. You did it for money, Mike said, throwing the papers at her feet. You sold our child for a penthouse. The papers scattered on the floor. They were custody filings. I am suing for full custody, Mike said. And my lawyer says with the evidence Mr. Forrester provided, I am going to get it. You are unfit, Harper. You are a monster. He turned to the resort manager who had appeared beside him, looking anxious about the commotion. Is she a guest here? Mike asked, pointing at Harper. The manager looked at me. I gave a subtle nod. I was the 40% shareholder after all. No, sir, the manager said, straightening his tie. The reservation was under Mr. Justin Forrester's name. And since the payment card has been declined due to frozen assets, none of the Kingsley party are guests here anymore. He turned to Harper and the Kingsleys, who were still huddled at their table. I am afraid I must ask you all to vacate the premises immediately. Security will escort you to the parking lot. Your vehicles have already been towed by the bank, but you are welcome to call a taxi from the main gate. Harper looked at Mike, then at her parents, then at me. She realized she had nothing. No rich husband, no farm money, no penthouse, and now no baby to use as a pawn. You can't do this, she shrieked. I am pregnant. Not for long if you don't start walking, the manager said, gesturing to the security guards. They were escorted out, a parade of shame. Harper screaming, Richard Kingsley weeping, Victoria staring blankly into space. They walked past the uneaten dinner, past the silent judgment of their peers, and out into the cold, dark night. The ballroom was quiet. The show was over. I stood on the stage alone. The spotlight felt cold now. I looked at the empty space where my son had stood. It is done, Lawrence said, stepping up beside me. Yes, I whispered. It is done. I took the boutonniere from my lapel, a white rose that Beatrice would have loved. I dropped it on the floor where Justin had knelt. Goodbye, son, I said. I walked down the stairs. My legs felt heavy. I walked past the guests who parted like the Red Sea. No one said a word. They were too shocked, too awed, too afraid. I walked out of the hotel. The air outside smelled of salt and rain. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the clean scent of freedom. The town car was waiting, but I walked past it. I walked to my old pickup truck parked in the back lot where the valet had hidden it. I climbed in. The seat was worn and comfortable. It smelled of oil and earth. I started the engine. It roared to life, a familiar, comforting sound. I backed out and drove away, leaving the Emerald Bay Resort in my rearview mirror. I didn't look back. I had a long drive ahead of me, and for the first time in a long time I was looking forward to going home, to my empty house, to my quiet fields, to the peace I had fought so hard to protect. The sun came up over the eastern ridge, painting the cornfields in gold and amber. It was a quiet morning, the kind of quiet that money cannot buy and that greed cannot understand. I sat on the porch swing, the same one I had built for Beatrice 40 years ago, holding a steaming mug of black coffee. The air smelled of damp earth and drying hay. It was the smell of honest work. It was the smell of peace. 1 year had passed since the night at the Emerald Bay Resort. 1 year since the lights went out on my son's illusions. The seasons had turned. The crops had been planted, grown, and harvested. The cycle of the farm continued, indifferent to the dramas of men. I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. It was the mail carrier. He waved from his truck and stuffed a bundle into the box at the end of the lane. I walked down to get it, my boots crunching on the frost. I sifted through the bills and the catalogs until I found it. The gray envelope. It was stamped with the seal of the State Correctional Facility. It was the 4th letter this month. Justin was serving his time, 5 to 10 years for embezzlement and fraud. Harper had testified against him in exchange for immunity. She had painted him as the mastermind, the monster who had coerced her. It was a lie, of course. They were two snakes in the same pit. But snakes will always eat each other to survive. I looked at the envelope. I recognized the handwriting. It was shaky, desperate. He probably wanted money for the commissary. Or maybe he wanted to say he was sorry again. Sorry he got caught. Sorry the check was ripped. Sorry he wasn't living in a penthouse. I walked back up the porch steps. I didn't open the letter. I didn't even feel the urge to hold it up to the light. The time for words was over. The time for listening to lies was gone. I opened the iron door of the wood stove that heated the living room. The flames licked at the opening, hungry and bright. I tossed the gray envelope inside. It landed on a log, curled at the edges, and then burst into flame. I watched the ink darken and vanish. I watched my son's words turn into smoke and rise up the chimney, disappearing into the cold morning air. Ash to ash, I whispered. I closed the stove door. It was done. I felt lighter. A different sound cut through the morning silence. A rattling, coughing engine. An old Ford truck older than mine pulled into the driveway. It was rusted blue with a cracked windshield and a bed full of tools. A young man stepped out. He was 19 years old, thin as a rail, but with shoulders broad enough to carry the world. He was wearing clean denim and a shirt that had been ironed, but was fraying at the collar. He took off his baseball cap and twisted it in his hands. "Mr. Forrester," he called out, his voice nervous. "I hope I'm not too early." I smiled. It was a genuine smile, one that reached my eyes. "You are right on time, Liam," I said. "Come on up. The coffee is hot." Liam Miller was the son of a tenant farmer 2 counties over. His father had died in a tractor accident 3 years ago, and Liam had been trying to keep their small plot of land afloat while finishing high school. He had grades that could have gotten him into Ivy League schools, but he didn't want Wall Street. He wanted the dirt. He wanted to grow things. He walked up the steps, wiping his boots carefully on the mat before stepping onto the porch. He treated my home with more respect in 5 seconds than Justin had in 30 years. "I reviewed your application, Liam," I said, gesturing for him to sit, "and I read your essay on sustainable crop rotation." Liam blushed, looking down at his boots. "It wasn't much, sir. Just ideas I had while working the night shift. I know I don't have the background of the other applicants." I looked at his hands. They were stained with oil and soil. They were calloused. They were the hands of a man who knew the value of $1 because he had bled for it. "You have exactly the background I am looking for," I said. I reached for the manila envelope sitting on the side table. It was the only other thing on the porch besides my coffee. "This isn't just a scholarship, Liam," I said, handing it to him. "The Beatrice Forrester Trust doesn't just pay for books. We pay for the future." Liam opened the envelope. He pulled out the letter. He read it. His eyes went wide. He stopped breathing for a moment. "Full tuition," he whispered. And a stipend for living expenses. And a grant for my family's farm equipment." He looked up at me, his eyes swimming with tears. "Mr. Forrester, I don't know what to say. This is everything. Why would you do this for me? You don't even know me." I looked out at the fields. I saw the wind rippling through the dried stalks. I saw the oak tree on the hill where Beatrice was resting. "I know you, Liam," I said softly. "I know you because I was you. I know what it is like to love something so much you are willing to rake your back for it." I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. I had a son, Liam. I gave him everything. I gave him the easy road, and he despised me for it. He looked at this land and saw dirt. He looked at me and saw a bank account. I paused, swallowing the lump in my throat. Legacy isn't about blood, Liam. It isn't about DNA. It is about values. It is about who you are when no one is watching. It is about respecting the hands that feed you. I pointed to the check in his hand, My legacy is not for ungrateful blood, I said, my voice firm. It is for people who know how to cherish the value of the land. It is for people who will build something real, not something fake to impress strangers. Liam stood up. He held out his hand. He gripped mine firmly. It was a good handshake. Honest. Strong. I won't let you down, sir, he said. I promise. I will make this count. I know you will, son, I said. Now go. You have work to do, and so do I. He walked back to his truck, clutching the envelope like it was a holy relic. He started the engine and drove away, leaving a cloud of dust that glowed in the sunlight. I watched him go. I didn't feel the emptiness I expected. I felt full. I felt like the circle was finally unbroken. I picked up my coffee cup. It was cold, but I drank it anyway. I stood up and walked to the edge of the porch. The wind hit my face. I am still here, Beatrice, I whispered to the wind. The farm is safe. The rats are gone. And we found a new seed to plant. I turned and walked back into the house. The picture of Beatrice on the mantel was new. It was a copy of the one Justin had broken, framed in simple, sturdy oak. She was smiling. I smiled back. The stinky country boy had cleaned house, and for the first time in a long time, the air smelled sweet. We live in a world that often mistakes net worth for self-worth. My son believed a tuxedo made a man, while I knew that true character is built in the mud. The tragedy wasn't that I lost a son. It was that he threw away unconditional love for a price tag that didn't even exist. True legacy is never inherited through DNA. It is earned through integrity, sweat, and respect. When you treat people like transactions, don't be surprised when life finally hands you the bill. The cleanest money often comes from the dirtiest hands, and sometimes you have to prune the family tree to let the sunlight back in. Would you have forgiven Justin, or did he get exactly what he deserved? Tell me your verdict in the comments below and subscribe for more stories where justice is served ice cold.